Welcome back, folks. I'm Frizz, and today we're going to be talking about the Archaeologist Archetype from the Advanced Player's Guide. The Archaeologist Archetype is for characters who want to explore ancient ruins, deal with traps, and study the past in detail. Plus, if you want to put things in a museum, then this is for you. The Archaeologist is one of those archetypes that is a ton of fun, though it does work best as a flavor archetype, especially with the free archetype variant rule. Without further ado, let's just get into things. The Archaeologist Dedication is pretty simple, but it is very good. To take it, you have to be trained in Perception, which is obviously easy, as literally every single 2E character that has ever been made has at least been trained in Perception. The other requirement is a bit harder to get, in that you have to be trained in both Society and Thievery. Having to be trained in two different skills is a bit steep for some characters, but if you have a decent intelligence, or are just a class that gets a lot of trained skills, it isn't that bad. Once you actually take it though, you become an expert in both Society and Thievery, and whenever you recall knowledge about ancient history, people, or cultures, you get a +1 circumstance bonus on that roll. Getting 2 skill increases for a feat is fantastic, and the bonus on recall knowledge is great if you're actually going to be dealing with ancient history. And if you're an archaeologist, you're probably going to be seeking that stuff out. Magical Scholastics is a pretty simple feat, but it is also very, very good. While you need study and skill, obviously, to do archaeology, a little bit of magic helps out a lot also. You then have studied that, and you can now cast Detect Magic, Guidance, and Read Aura as innate occult cantrips. If you can choose 3 cantrips to be able to cast, I would actually recommend probably these 3 in my top list, as they are incredible to get. Also, they heighten, which is of course good. Detect Magic will be able to be used to, find where magic is, what school it is, if there's magic around. Read Aura can tell you exactly which item is magical, and Guidance alone is insanely good to have access to, as your entire party will absolutely love you for having it. Settlement Scholastics is a 4th level skill feat, and in particular campaigns, it is absolutely amazing. You choose a particular settlement, and then you become an expert in lore for that particular settlement. So if you choose Absalom, you become an expert in Absalom lore. If you're already trained in that particular lore though, then you become trained in a different lore for a different settlement that you choose. Generally speaking, if you already are an expert or trained in a lore for a settlement, just choose a different one. Also, you choose a single common or uncommon language that is spoken in that settlement to learn. It has to be something that is frequently spoken though, but that still isn't that bad. As you can guess, how useful this will be depends greatly on your campaign. If your campaign takes place mostly within one huge city, having a lore for that city is actually incredibly useful for figuring out where to go, maybe who to avoid, all of that sort of stuff. If your campaign takes place in all over the place and your party just wanders around, then this is much less useful, but it is still useful for learning uncommon languages. Trap Finder is a rogue and investigator feat, and it makes traps much less dangerous for you. You get a +1 circumstance bonus on perception checks to find traps, on your AC versus traps, and on any save that you make against traps. Also, you always get a check to find a trap, even if you aren't using the searching exploration action that is normally required to spot traps before you trigger them. That alone is very, very useful, but it doesn't end there. You can also disable traps that require being a master in Thievery despite not actually having master proficiency. And if you ever actually become a master in Thievery, you can disable traps that need legendary Thievery, and all the circumstance bonuses from this feat improve to +2s instead of +1s. Obviously, how useful this feat will be depends on how often your GM throws traps at you. If you're often exploring ancient tombs covered in traps to dissuade people from putting their stuff in museums, then this is insanely good, as it always gives you a little bit of insurance against traps by spotting them before they even are triggered. Scholastic Identification is a pretty simple skill feat. You have to be a master in Society, but then you can use your study of ancient texts and cultures to figure out basically anything. You can use Society when deciphering writing, no matter what the writing actually is, or what the normal skill would be to actually decipher it. It doesn't matter if it's an arcane treatise on particular types of magic, you can use Society. Also, you can use Society to identify magical items or locations, so long as the item or location in question has important cultural significance to any culture. This is pretty fun, though there aren't a huge amount of situations where you'll actually need to decipher writing, and there aren't all that many items that have, like, huge cultural significance. It's still a really fun idea for a skill feat though, and I recommend that your GM is a little bit lenient on what cultural significance means. In particular campaigns, this can be incredible. Archaeologist luck is a simple reaction that is incredibly good if your GM really likes traps. Once per hour, whenever you fail a check against a trap, but not critically fail, whether that check actually be a save or a normal skill check, you can then roll again and you are forced to use the new result, even if it's worse. Your luck is simply that good. Normally reroll effects like this are limited in frequency much more, most commonly to once a day, due to how good reroll effects are. You're going to be incredibly good at dealing with a trap. If you think you're going to set it off, just roll again and hope that you don't. Also, in Archives of Nethys, this is not listed as a reaction, though it most certainly is one due to the fact that it has a trigger and a frequency and all that. It is definitely a reaction, despite what Archives of Nethys says. Speaking of traps though, Delay Trap is a situational reaction that allows for you to try and stop traps from even being an issue in the first place, or rather to at least offload the issue until a further point. Whenever a trap within your reach is triggered, you can try and jam that trap to give people a time to get away, or to potentially deal with the effects. You then roll a thievery check against the trap's disable DC, and then you add 5 to that number, so it's the disable DC plus 5. On a success, you prevent the trap from being triggered at all, or you delay it until the end of your next turn. You don't get to choose which one that is though, as your GM chooses whichever one is worse for you. If you critically succeed, then you get to make the choice rather than your GM, deciding to either delay it or stop it completely. Often you're probably just going to want to stop completely, but you could also try to delay it and then get an enemy in the line of fire. If you fail on your thievery check, then nothing happens. Unfortunately, if you critically fail, you are then flat-footed until the start of your next turn, which most often is just going to mean that you're flat-footed to whatever this trap is going to try and kill you with. This feat is pretty dang good if you deal with a bunch of traps, even with the plus 5 bonus to the DC that you're going up against. So long as you have a decent dexterity and thievery proficiency, that bonus isn't all that bad. I mean, of course it's bad, but it's not impossible to deal with, and it can give your entire team protection against a trap. As you can guess from its name, Greater Magical Scholastics is an expansion on the Magical Scholastics feat, and it gives you access to more spells. You can now cast Augury, Locate, and Non-Detection once per day as innate occult spells. Also, Non-Detection is heightened to the same level as your cantrips from Magical Scholastics, meaning that it won't be foiled by a simple Detect magic. Augury is a nice spell for checking if opening a door is a bad idea, and Non-Detection is a great spell for keeping specific loot safe. Locate, though, is especially good in my mind, as it allows you to track particular people perfectly so long as they're within, 500 feet. While Locate cannot be cast on people without it being heightened, it can be cast on their clothing as long as you've seen it before, and it doesn't even allow for any saving throws. If you need to find someone or track down that cool shiny thing that you saw on the market, Locate is the spell for you. Like I mentioned at the start of this video, the Archaeologist is a ton of fun, though it does work substantially better with the free archetype rule. While many of its feats are absolutely good, they are incredibly specific to particular parts of Pathfinder, and they aren't particularly useful elsewhere. While this archetype does add a ton of flavor to a character and really helps with the traps, it isn't very mechanically strong outside of the realm of traps and some uses of society. Really, archetypes like this are the reason why free archetype is a rule in the first place. Outside of that though, I do really like this archetype. It's just in that sweet spot between mechanically super strong and mechanically pointless, but it's also amazing due to allowing anyone to get access to Trap Finder, not just rogues or investigators. Trap Finder is one of those feats that's almost required if you want to deal with traps at a high level, due to how it can help you get around proficiency requirements. The only thing that I think that this archetype is missing is feats that give you abilities with whips. Thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video and found something interesting from it. This has been a fun video to make, since I made it all in one day. Gotta love procrastination. Regardless, I hope that you guys enjoyed and that you learned something. Until I see you next, live a wonderful life.